to encapsulate the story before I get into the details. I think there's a nascent, metals bull market upon us, base metals, disrupted, of course, in the last couple of weeks by some market turmoil. However, no bull market is a straight line. So I anticipate, with certainly global restocking, resource nationalism, and an underinvestment in exploration and development, that we're at the sort of leading edge of what should be a long bull market for base metals. Zinc itself in particular is going to be impacted by substantial stimulus investment. China having recently announced over $2 trillion in infrastructure spending that they're planning. Infrastructure, of course, is critical for demand in zinc. And when you think about zinc projects that might represent the next generation of mines, our Macmillan Pass project is a pretty clear standout. It was enough that we, thankfully, right before the markets went down 2 weeks ago, we completed a $13 million financing with lead orders from Teck Resources, the world's third largest zinc miner, and a PE fund out of Australia called Ibera. So this is going to be a big year for us and leading into next year. And critically, we're not just fully funded for this year, we're fully funded through next year to complete an updated resource and PEA with the most capital we've ever had in the bank at almost $20 million. So yeah, just to reflect, remind everyone that Teck owns 9% of the company, is a happy and supportive shareholder, and that we have still a pretty tight share ownership over the years. And really what I want to focus this discussion on is, we went public 5 years ago, and I really want to kind of revisit what we've accomplished in the last 5 years and what that means for next year's studies. So as a brief reminder for those not familiar, we are naturally in the Yukon, being in the Yukon Pavilion here. We're in the eastern part of the territory, right on the border with NWT. Project's accessible via road, and we have had a government commitment on improving that road. So let's start from 2017. The company was launched, $4 million IPO, oversubscribed. And it's worth reminding everyone that every year we've had great drill intersections. That year, great intersection at Tom East, which always has great intersections there, being a high grade zone. When we started with this project with 54 square kilometers option from Hud Bay, that year we made our first acquisition, the first bolt-on, the MAC claims from Newmont, to expand it to 214 square kilometers, and did quite a bit of work. And that all led to 2018, which was a huge year for us. So the new resource, when we bought this off Hud Bay, their resource at the time, which was from 2016, was about 30 million tons total. So our resource in 2018 was 11.2 million tons indicated and 39.5 million tons inferred. So a substantial growth over what Hud Bay had sold us at the Tom and Jason deposits. And that fed into a preliminary economic assessment we did that year, which hit the marks that we wanted to see. For a base metal project, you want a long multi-cycle mine life, you want healthy costs, you want a good after-tax IRR and NPV, and we hit all the marks. But critically, that was 2018, and a lot has changed since then. So the drilling we did in 2018 all occurred after we completed these studies. So it was all something that has not been reflected in a resource update or economics. So that year we hit another step out at Tom East, 21% zinc, 13.5% lead, over 16 meters. So a true bonanza grade intersection at Tom East that is not reflected in the 2018 resource. We did some drilling at End Zone, which was not at all in the 2018 resource, let alone this intersection. And we added another 244 square kilometers of land, including optioning the NID claims from Teck that year, which added the then poorly understood boundary zone to the project. So we came in 19 and 2019 did a bunch of drilling, and really critical in 2019 were two things. One, the addition of the Tom North zone at the Tom deposit, which will likely add tonnage with open pit potential. And most notably that year, the kind of rediscovery of boundary zones. So Teck, as Caminco, had done drilling there back in the 1980s. We had some sense that it was not well understood and that there was some controls on grade that maybe were missed. Came in with an intersection there that was 230 meters true width of 4.5% zinc. The first 100 meters of that from surface, like from the collar, almost 9% zinc. So this is a tremendous intersection in terms of reflecting open pit potential. And 2020 was kind of building on that boundary zone rediscovery, and we did some gravity around boundary and found the anomaly extended to the west, and that led to the discovery of Boundary West. And credit to our team, they turned around the gravity survey, the field level maps, the drill targeting, and a discovery in one Yukon season, which is not a long season. So that was a very fast discovery, and the first intersections there hitting massive sulfides that were 6.5% zinc and 48 grams silver over 24 meters. And critically also, they intersected what we call the lower sequence at Boundary West, which was mineralization in rocks much older than thought to be mineralized at Mac Pass. And reflected that when we bought this project, it was understood that Tom and Jason were the same age, they were the same horizon, and this was the only horizon that mattered. What this discovery at Boundary West established was what we already thought, which is that Tom and Jason are not the same horizon, and that there's actually multiple mineralized horizons. And as we understand it now, there's at least 5 or 6 mineralized horizons here. So very different than what we inherited in 2017. And obscured there, but the Yukon government also in 2020, announced $71 million in funding for our access road. That happened at PDAC 2020, which was perhaps not the best time for good news, as the world was collapsing around us. But we had a blip on the day and then went right back to the market route that everyone was in. 2021, last year, we took that, if I just go back for a second here, this was our map of Boundary West in 2020. This was our interpretation after last year's drilling. So it changed substantially. So that massive sulfide zone, we saw increasing grade to depth, getting down to sort of plus 10% zinc over 40 meters at the bottom. And we made another discovery of another new horizon there in 2021. Almost 24% zinc, 3.5% lead, and 75 grams silver over 10 meters. So another stratiform horizon there, which really reaffirmed our notion that, look, this is a multi-horizon system. This is a long-lived fluid flux, lots of metal that came through this system here. The knowledge of Boundary and Boundary West continues to grow, and we'll be doing quite a bit of drilling there in 2022. So cut to this year, like I said, we just raised $13.2 million on top of the around $6 million we had in the bank at the time. Teck and Ibera, our 2 largest shareholders, recommitted for that. So we came out of the gate in that financing with $10 million from 3 investors right out of the gate, which made the financing easy to complete. We got a bunch of drill holes planned for this year, so back to Tom and Jason to do some more drilling there and some low-hanging fruit to expand the resources, Boundary and Boundary West, and all of this towards producing a resource and PEA next year. And a note, I'm not going to talk about it at this talk, but we did stake a couple weeks ago the Gaynor River project in NWT, expanding our critical metals portfolio. That is a zinc project that has geological similarities to Capuchy, Ivanhoe's Capuchy deposit in DRC. I took some flack for making that comparison between Gaynor River and Capuchy, but I would note it's Ivanhoe's former chief geologist who made that comparison, not myself. So it's an interesting project and something we'll get a bit of work done on this year. So what does all this mean? Let's think back to that 2018. We talked about these numbers, but that 2018 PEA was the base for really what we start building on as we go into next year's study. We look at a $450 million after-tax MPV, but now we know that the government's committing $71 million to our access roads. They've given us an indication that as the project matures, they would look to commit more. So we're looking at significant reduction in our upfront capital from that. Additionally, post 2018 PEA, we talked about the capacity to expand the pit at Tom. We've done quite a bit of work, both geotechnical and delineation of different rock units to understand how we might grow the pit at Tom, steepen the pit walls, and look for more of a Goldilocks pit size there, which is, to say just right. We did a very small pit in 2018 PEA because we wanted to keep it restrained. It was, but now with more data, including not just the rock units, but how those rock units behave in terms of acid generation, allows us to be much more aggressive about pit sizing there. And then at Tom, Tom and Jason, I've told this, don't sleep on Tom and Jason. The 2018 resource was not by any stretch of the imagination the end all be all at Tom and Jason. So we've added Tom North there. We've significantly expanded or increased the grade at parts of Tom where historical drilling got low recovery, and that low recovery was very selective in the high grade zones because the high sulfide zones were particularly friable and were washed away. So of course, increasing the grade in zones that were already in the mine plan is pure gravy. So we, see new understanding at Jason South that will allow us to add a new lens there. And although we will not get into this year, that there are what we call Tom Deep, which is an intersection of 14 meters of 14% zinc. That's a fault offset of the main part of Tom West. We believe that we will not get to this year, but reflects additional upside at Tom and Jason. But critically, the big needle mover for this coming year is going to be the addition of boundary zone. So that was something that we picked up off tech, that we took the main part of boundary zone and have expanded it and delineated and improved the grade there. But critically also we discovered the boundary west zone, 2 stratiform layers there that are very high grade and with significant open pit potential. So this has the potential to significantly move the NPV versus 2018. And then the blue sky, we're not going to get a lot of wildcat or any wildcat drilling this year, but we have half dozen or more targets on the project that all have the potential to be the sort of deposits as Tom and Jason and end zone boundary, etc. We have a strong indication this is, well, not a strong indication, we know this is a district. The Hess fault there is a reactivated fault, originally a growth fault. At the intersection of that fault and second order faults is the is the sort of locus point for the fluid flow that produces these deposits. So Bog, 11, Imperial, Kobuk, Bend, Corvus, etc. All these targets have the potential to be significant deposits in their own right. So what does all this add up to? So you take that 450 million after-tax NPV, and each one of these, well, except for the blue sky exploration, which will not be manifested for next year's study, each one of these adds to the NPV. And ultimately, what we're targeting here is, probably going to get myself in trouble for making probable predictions, but possibly a doubling of the NPV over 2018. What we really want to, our stretch goals are $1 billion plus NPV. Something that might be a top 10 production profile zinc mines globally. First and second quartile costs, and everyone has a different definition. But in my book, if you're a 20 plus year mine life, you're in the lower half of the cost curve. And you're one of the 10 to 15 largest zinc mines, that is a tier 1 mine. So we think this has true tier 1 potential. We're expanding it, we're de-risking it, and we're advancing it. And we think this is a project that would look very much at home and within a major mining company. So that's it. So I'll turn it over to any questions if there are any. No. So I think the question was, is there anyone else working in the region of Macmillan Pass? And no, there isn't. We did the deals to expand our property from 54 square kilometers to 940 square kilometers with basically every landholder who was there. And we've locked up about 40 kilometers of strike length of that fault that we think is critical. It after that kind of gets buried a bit, and we're not sure of the potential beyond that. But this is consistent, that sort of strike length. You look at the other major zinc deposits in Yukon, both in and around Faro and Howard's Pass. These as well have these chain of deposits, right? And both of those, truly spectacular metal endowments as well. And certainly Faro when you consider what was mined out of there. So we're pretty happy to have it all. So the question was, what's the share price? Yeah, so today I think we're 57 to 59 or something like that. 2 weeks ago we were 83 to 84, and we just closed the financing at 70 cents. So it is an opportunity to buy, 30% cheaper than tech just did. That's a good price in my books. The which targets? Oh, you mean not the muon? Yeah. So we had teamed up with a company called Ideon Technologies, who's developed this novel geophysical technique called muon tomography. If you're familiar with muons, muons are like this cosmic ray produced from supernovas that come from space and will penetrate the Earth, and depending on the density and depth, will penetrate more or less. So you put these detectors subsurface looking up, and it basically produces somewhat of an X-ray of the ground above you. Depending on the distance to surface and the density in any given direction of the rock to surface, you get more or less muons from that direction, because the survey is directional. So it really does, and then you do multiple detectors to do an inversion to seek out dense bodies. This survey was actually used, this style of survey was used at the Great Pyramid of Giza to actually identify, because it can identify both dense bodies and non-dense bodies or empty space. So it's used at the Great Pyramid of Giza to identify a new chamber that was previously unknown. So anyways, that's how the survey works. This is a very new technique, although muon's been known for a long time and detectors have been known for a long time. Ideon's taken the step to put the detectors in a format that can be sent down drill holes. So we will be deploying those this year at Boundary and possibly also Tom East. All right, thank you very much. Have a great day.